Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Pig Edge, Teagasc Pig podcast with me, Amy Quinn, where we are bringing you the latest news, information and advice to keep Irish pig farmers up to date. The Teagasc Outlook 2022 conference took place on December 7th, where an overview and outlook for the various agricultural sectors was presented, the pig sector included, with farm inputs up across the sectors for 2022. The Pig Development Department's McKeon reviewed 2021 and forecasted 2022 for the pig sector and is joining us on this episode to highlight the main points from this year and expectations for next year. Michael, we're nearly at the end of 2021 and you're fresh off the back of the Outlook 2022 conference. Looking back on 2021, what were the main factors affecting profitability in the Irish pig sector during the year?
As we're in December now, it's a good time to look back. There was probably five main factors really that would have affected the industry over that time, over the last 12 months. One of them obviously is a Chinese slowdown. So the volume of pig meat we had been sending in 2019 and 2020 was very high. Unfortunately, the market in China has cooled due to their recovery after their sow herd. And as a result of that, the amount they had to import was a lot less. So that affected our exports and the pig price here in Ireland. The other major factor was the cereal prices. While this was good for the tillage growers, unfortunately, it's not good for the pig producers, especially the Irish pig producers, as it's 73% of the cost of producing the pig is down to feed cost. So we saw a huge jump in cereal prices there, both due to a drought in North America in the summertime and then due to bad weather at harvest time in the French market. That has caused a spike in cereal prices, especially wheat and barley. The other factors, I suppose, is the improved efficiencies. So the Irish pig sector, the efficiencies are improving year on year in that the amount of pig meat that is being produced per sow per unit is increasing over the last 10 years and further increased this year, which is a good factor. The not so good factors was that some of this pig meat, we found it hard to get slaughtered. So Northern Ireland would take about 12% of the amount of pigs which we produce every year. And unfortunately, they had a problem in one of the Northern Ireland slaughter plants, and they couldn't take the capacity that they normally take. So this has led to less pigs being exported up to Northern Ireland for slaughtering and has led to a backlog on the farms here and up in Northern Ireland, which isn't good. The other factor that is always there is African swine fever. So this had been in Eastern Europe for a number of years. And then last year in 2020, they had an outbreak over Germany. And this has still been an issue for the whole of 2021 there, that they have had a lot more outbreaks. So they were probably the main five factors that we've seen in 2021.
You mentioned high feed costs as one of the major factors. What prices are we currently looking at the moment and what will it average at for the year?
Yeah, the high feed prices are just absolutely nearly at a record high. At the moment, we would estimate that the average price at the moment is about €363 a tonne for compound feed. So when you average out all of the creeps and the links and the weaner feed and the amount that's been eaten by the pig, and you take a composite average of that, that's where you get €363 a tonne. So this is very, very high, again, due to the wheat and barley. When we look at the year average, it's about 337, which is still very, very high. It would have been probably €30 a tonne less than that if we look back 12 or 18 months as an average figure. So what that does to the feed price on a cent per kilo basis is feed price cent per kilo in December is 127, and we estimate the average for the year is 118 cent. So that's a lot higher say than last year, where it was 109, the previous year 110, previous year 107. So we're well ahead of where we were for the last 4 or 5 years. The lowest cost there in the last 5 years was in 2017, where it was 103. So it was 103 2017 and 118 for this year. So a big jump.
The pig price also went the wrong way this year. What happened here?
Yep, pig price unfortunately went the wrong way. There was a number of factors. The first factor was that there was a backlog of pigs in Europe at the start of the year because of the COVID factors in the likes of Germany and Denmark and Netherlands, they had a backlog of pigs. So it's about 150,000 pigs there had been backed up. So that was an overhang on the market at the start of the year. But once the overhang cleared, the pig price actually went up, and things were looking nicely. The pig price went up to about 172, 174 there for May and June. And as I said, the outlook was good. Unfortunately, we always knew that the Chinese market was going to cool because they had gone from a slump into a boom, and where their pig prices went up through the roof. Now, unfortunately, that encouraged restocking at a very, very fast rate. And they probably overdid the restocking because they've now gone from a boom to a back down to a bust. As a result of that, because of the sheer volume of pig meat that they are able to produce themselves at the moment, and we weren't able to export as much as we usually did across the EU. So the pig price fell from the middle of the year from 172, 173 back down now to 146 in December. And the average then will be about we estimated 159 for the 12 months. So again, 159 isn't a bad price. It's lower than last year, 174. Previous year was 169. So it's probably a little bit lower than those. So the pig price itself would be fine. It's just the feed cost there is really taken from it though.
So with the higher feed prices and the lower pig price combined, this has obviously resulted in tighter margins this year. Can you tell us a bit more on this?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, because we had the double whammy of the two of them, the margins have fallen from the middle of the year from about 51, 52 cents. It has fallen then month by month, and we're back down to 19-cent margin over feed, which is very, very tight. We would always estimate you need 45 to 50 cent as a margin over feed to be able to cover all your cost. So for December, it's 19 cent, and if we take the year as a whole, it's 41 cent. So the year as a whole would have been a slight loss-making year. And again, due to high feed price, the high pig price last year and the previous year, last year there would have been a margin over feed of 66 cents, previous year 59 cents. So we're down at 41 cents this year. So it's not great. We're in a slight loss-making situation, but as I said, at least we're coming in on the back of two very, very good years, and that will help to act as a buffer for the losses this year and the forthcoming losses, I suppose, in 2022.
So presumably this tight margin then is going to continue into 2022.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah, it is going to continue into 2022. The high feed prices, really, the wheat, barley, there is not going to change dramatically until we get into, say, the second quarter of 2022. Really, we need to get the spring behind us before we might start seeing a slipping of the wheat and barley prices. And that's on the basis that with the new harvest coming in, if there's anybody there with huge amounts still in their sheds, they're going to start selling out before the new harvest comes in, because the price will hopefully drop at the time of the new harvest. So hopefully we'll start seeing the price of these ingredients starting to slip from April onwards. But unfortunately, the first quarter is still going to be very, very high for feed costs, and it is going to be, the pig price is still going to be relatively low at the same price we have at the moment. So while the pig price, will increase as well as the year goes on, for the first quarter we're going to have high feed prices and a very low margin. Very low pig prices, which will give a very low margin. So we're looking at, for the first quarter, margin over feed of about 13 cents. Which unfortunately, if you look at a 600 sow unit, that is probably a deficit of about 36,000 a month there for the first quarter. So it's a big impact on their cash flow, and it's something that they're going to have to plan forward for to try and overcome that.
Yeah, it's a tough time. And what is the margin looking like when we get into the latter part of next year, if you forecast it?
Yeah, the latter part of the year is actually looking a lot better because, as we mentioned, the Chinese market is going to open up again, hopefully. And at the same time, there's reduction in the sow herd in Europe. And that the deficit of pig meat then is going to start being felt from May onwards. So from the pig price side of things, pig price will be rising. And then from the feed ingredient price, then once that starts to slide from the April, May onwards, then you're really starting to open up a margin again. So if we look at the 4 quarters, we're starting off, as I mentioned, at a very low margin over feed of only 13 cents. The second quarter, it rises up to 32 cents. The third quarter, we estimate 46 cents. And the last quarter, it'll be 60 cents. So actually, the profit margin for the last quarter is actually going to be very, very good. Unfortunately, it's the first quarter is really going to pull it down as an average, though. So when you look at the average as a year, it's probably about 38-cent margin over feed, which wouldn't be that unlike the current year we're in at the moment, where we said 41 cent. So it's a little bit tighter than this year, but the big problem, as I said, is just that first quarter.
Michael, and do you think that the tight margins are going to affect the length of feed credit for 2022?
Yeah, that would be a question in the industry. A lot of people are asking. If we look back over the last 2 or 3 years, because profitability in the sector was good, the feed credit would have come in from about 4.5 months back to a little over 3 months. So it's after coming in by 5 to 6 weeks. 4 to 5 weeks, which doesn't sound a lot, but for an average unit, that 4 to 5 weeks that feed credit has been pulled back in is probably the equivalent of 160, 170,000 euros. So it is a huge improvement. Now, from speaking to people in the milling industry, they would be reluctant to let feed credit go back out again. And really, at the end of the day, the mills aren't the bankers of the pig sector. It's really down to the banks that should be financing a shortfall in the cash flow for the first quarter. So I would say it might be a little bit of both. I would say if people are stuck, they need to talk. The mills might try and help a little bit, but really it's the financial institutions that the banks that really need to shore up the shortfall in the cash flow. So it's something they need to be doing, speaking to them now.
And is there anything in particular producers should be doing now?
Well, that's the main thing I would do. I think they should contact their banks themselves and just try and lay out that they may need an injection for the first 6 months of next year. So for a 600 sow unit, depending on your current account status at the moment, if you do have, I suppose, a war chest over the last 2 years that has built up and your current account is very strong, you might be able to use that to ride out the first 6 months of next year. But otherwise, you really need to be putting an application together for your banks to try and support you there for funding. So as I said, a 600 sow unit is probably going to need 150,000. So if that's the situation, if you think that you are going to need money from the banks, there's no point trying to go in at the last minute. You really need to be forward planning that. And you really need to be sitting down with your banks, I would say, this side of Christmas. You need to appraise them of the situation, what your current costs are, what your current feed costs are, and what you think the deficit is going to be for the next 6 months. And at least then forward planning, I suppose, is what I'd
okay, so best to get ahead of it now.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So if we leave prices and margins aside just for a minute, is there anything else producers should have on their radar for 2022?
Yeah, I suppose it's a few things. They're not going to add any profitability to the sector, unfortunately, but they are stuff that are coming in that we have to be aware of. One is there is new restrictions for antibiotic usages. Now, it is an area that the pig producers are aware of over the last couple of years and have been making huge strides to reduce the antibiotic usages on farms. But legislation on this will be tightening from next month. So it is something they just need to be aware of with their vet, and that they need to work out exactly if they have health issues on the unit, how are they going to cope. They will still be allowed to use antibiotics, obviously, if an animal is sick, but you just need a little bit more planning with their vet around the whole area. The other thing that is, I suppose, a big issue for next year is the removal of zinc oxide. So this will be banned from June next year. So the zinc oxide is used in the creep diets and link diets there at the moment, and it helps to reduce the level of scours that the young piglets have. So this will be removed from June onwards. So really, units should be trialing how to get around this, the feed strategy and the feeding regime that they need to be implementing now to try and minimize the effect once the zinc oxide is removed. Other than that, I suppose ammonia and odor monitoring is something that is coming down the tracks at some stage. We don't really know exactly what the guise that will be, but it's something just to be aware of. And the last thing then is the intact tails and trying to move the sector to producing the pigs with the intact tails without clipping tails. And that is an issue the sector are aware of, and it's something that's going to need more work in 2022. So they would be probably the main things that are coming down the track, I suppose, the pig sector here for next year.
Okay, so a lot to consider with everything else going on, I suppose.
Yes. It'll be a busy year with it all.
I suppose a talking point at the Outlook conference also was fertilizer price and availability, which is a major concern for the other sectors. So is there an opportunity here for pig producers?
This is probably the one I suppose good thing for 2022 from a pig producer point of view, or the one golden light for the forthcoming year, in that because the price of fertilizer has nearly doubled, obviously the value of pig manure has risen as well. So when you look at the nutrients in pig manure and you compare that to if you had to buy it in as chemical fertilizer, the value of pig manure has jumped. So for example, for a cubic meter now is worth about €10.50, or if you want to put it in old terms, it is worth for 1,000 gallons is now worth about €48. So this is huge value now going forward. So where people may have had to had to foot the cost of transporting the slurry themselves out to their slurry clients or out to other farmers, there certainly is the opportunity now to be able to do something at least on a transport cost, and are even some of the pig producers are looking at even being able to sell it. So it's a funny situation, unusual situation, but it's probably the one bright light looking forward in the 2022 that there's going to be huge demand for pig manure going forward, and it is going to be a very valuable commodity.
Thanks, Michael. On that slightly positive note, we'll leave it there. A concerning period for producers, but hopefully your predictions for much improved margins over feed in the latter part of the year next year come to pass anyway.
Exactly. Like the pig sector has always done these cycles, and it's not going to be anything different. We always seem to get through them. So as I said, just a little bit of forward planning for the first quarter by speaking to your banks before Christmas, and that will certainly help you to ease you out into the profitability second half of the year.
Great. Thanks very much, Michael.
No problem. You're very welcome.
That's it for this episode of The Pig Edge, and many thanks to Michael for joining me on the show. Don't forget to listen and follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from so you never miss an episode. And for more information from the Pig Development Department, go to teagasc.ie/pigs and follow us on Twitter @Teagasc Pigs. I'm Amy Quinn. Thanks for listening.